Courtney never believed in love at first sight until she met Brian. At a summer party in 2012, she reluctantly tagged along with her best friend, feeling out of place among the rowdy crowd. Sipping lemonade by the bar, she spotted him, tall, confident, effortlessly magnetic. Even from a distance, his piercing eyes and small scar above his eyebrow intrigued her. Brian had noticed her too. Drawn by an unspoken force, he approached. "Hi, I'm Brian," he said warmly. Their conversation, which started as small talk, quickly became effortless. They spoke of movies, sarcastic humor, and dreams. His life in the Navy, her passion for photography. As the night ended, Brian walked her to her car. "I had a great time. Can I see you again?" Courtney, heart racing, smiled. "I'd like that." As she drove away, she knew her life had just changed. Their first date was simple, Italian dinner, a river walk. The second, more adventurous, a mountain hike, where they watched the sunset in comfortable silence. Soon, late-night calls turned into dawn conversations. But distance tested them. Brian's station was hours away, making reunions rare. They made up for it with video calls, heartfelt letters, and weekend getaways. He surprised her with sunflowers on her birthday, wrote letters instead of texts, and made her feel deeply cherished. One night, under a sky full of stars, he admitted, "I'm falling for you, Courtney." She smiled. "Me too, Brian." Then, reality struck. Brian was deployed. The airport goodbye was unbearable. "I love you," he whispered before disappearing through security. Courtney lived in constant worry. News updates, emails, crackling phone calls. Each moment of contact was precious. Then came the silence. One agonizing week, all communication was lost. She spiraled, fearing the worst, until her phone rang. "Hey, baby." Brian's tired but familiar voice brought her to tears. When he finally returned, she ran into his arms. "I'm never letting you go again." Brian proposed simply, just them, in the home they built together. Their wedding was intimate, vows promising love through every storm. Life was filled with love, Sunday pancakes, and dreams of a family. After months of trying, Courtney saw 2 pink lines. Brian's joy was unmatched. When their daughter, Reagan, was born, he whispered, "She's perfect." Life was beautiful, until it wasn't. It was an ordinary Tuesday. Brian kissed Courtney and Reagan goodbye before heading to work. "I'll be home early," he promised, tickling Reagan until she squealed with laughter. Courtney smiled, watching him walk out the door. She had no idea it would be the last time she would ever see him alive. That afternoon, her phone rang. She answered casually, expecting Brian. Instead, a state trooper's voice greeted her. "Mrs. Hill, I'm sorry to inform you that your husband was involved in an accident." Her stomach dropped. He didn't survive. The world tilted. Her knees buckled. The phone slipped from her hands. Somewhere, she heard Reagan giggling in the next room, completely unaware that her father was gone. Courtney screamed, a raw, guttural sound of disbelief and agony. She refused to believe it. She called Brian's phone, over and over, hoping he'd pick up. He didn't. By the time Sarah arrived, Courtney was curled on the floor, shaking. "No, no, no. This isn't real." But it was. At the funeral, she sat frozen, holding Reagan in her lap. She barely heard the eulogies. None of it felt real. The casket was lowered into the ground, and that was when it truly hit her. He wasn't coming back. Her rock, her love, the father of her child, gone. Weeks passed in a blur of grief. She barely ate, barely slept. She went through the motions of caring for Reagan, but felt like a ghost of herself. And then, the nausea started. At first, she blamed stress, but something inside her whispered the truth. She took a pregnancy test. 2 pink lines. Her hands trembled. Tears blurred her vision. "Brian," she whispered. He was gone, but a part of him was still here. She went to his grave, pressing her palm against the cold stone. "I'm pregnant, Brian." The weight of it crushed her. Joy, grief, fear, love, all tangled together. A few weeks later, during an ultrasound, the doctor's expression shifted. "Courtney, You're having triplets." She laughed. Then she cried. Life had taken so much, but had also given her something unbelievable in return. Carrying triplets was exhausting. Every step, every breath felt like a battle. Then, at 20 weeks, during a routine scan, the technician's face fell. Courtney's heart stopped. "I'm so sorry," the doctor said softly. "One of the babies, Brady, his heart has stopped." She broke. She had already lost Brian. Now she was losing a child, too. She held on to Miles and Harper, clinging to the hope that they would survive. She refused to let grief consume her again. At 34 weeks, she underwent a C-section. The room was cold, sterile, but then 2 cries pierced the air. Miles and Harper were alive. She held them, tears streaming down her face. "You're here. You made it." Brady never took his first breath, but his name would never be forgotten. The first months were a blur of sleepless nights, bottles, and Reagan's toddler energy. Courtney wanted to break, but she didn't. Sarah, Brian's family, and even his old Corpsman friends stepped in to help. She kept going, even when she felt like she couldn't. One night, overwhelmed, she whispered, "Brian, I don't know if I can do this." But then, Miles stirred, Harper cooed, Reagan giggled in her sleep, and Courtney realized she could. As the years passed, she built a life. She reopened her photography business. She created a memory box filled with Brian's letters, photos, and stories for the kids. On his birthday, they released balloons with messages to the sky. When Reagan asked, "Where's Daddy?" Courtney would point to her heart. "Right here, baby. Always." She watched Miles and Harper grow, saw glimpses of Brian in their eyes, their laughter, and slowly, joy returned. One day, as she watched her children play in the park, she whispered, "We made it, Brian." And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it.